All right, good afternoon. I'm Texas Storm Chasers Baldy and Chief David Reimer. Not your typical tornado coverage, but we're doing something different today. We're going to be talking about a wildfire event underway across portions of the state. Even those of you not being impacted by fire, which is most of you, it's sure darn windy across Texas. So far, peak wind gust has been near Sunray, Texas, which is a bit northeast of Dumas in the northern Texas panhandle. That was around 1 p.m. of 90 miles per hour. Dalhart, which apparently has lost its weather station, we had gusts above 74 miles an hour earlier. We've had gusts in Stratford, which is up 287 in the northern Texas panhandle. That's north of Dumas, up to 84 miles an hour. Destructive winds will continue for the next few hours, but we are expecting those damaging winds across the Texas panhandle to start lessening after 3 to 4 p.m., and then they will quickly drop off near sunset. However, as we progress through the afternoon hours, we're expecting the relative humidity values to plummet. So while winds will be coming down, so will the humidity. So the fire danger will actually remain quite high through the late afternoon and early evening hours. Let's go ahead and talk about the fires we have right now. We do have multiple. The product you're looking at, in addition to the surface wind gust, the background image, that's going to be the Ghost 16 satellite rapid scan data for hotspots, otherwise known as fires. Fires put off a signature on satellite that allows us to see hotspots, allows us to see fires when they get started and get going, allow for a rough tracking. Now, a couple of caveats with this data is one, it is not exact, so the data is somewhat coarse, and also you cannot use it to track fire down to street level. That is a big no. Let me go ahead and turn off that data. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the data on the latest scan. Let's zoom in to the panhandle. First off, very large wildfire, several thousand, if not tens, over 10,000 acres now west of Guyman, Oklahoma, south of Highway 412, with strong west winds in Guyman. That could be a problem for the city of Guyman at some point this afternoon. West winds gusting over 70 miles an hour. We have this fire near Channing. This is the Parker Creek Fire. Started a couple miles southwest of Channing, southwest of Highway 385. In fact, let me turn the telestrator on, and I'll let you see. Fire started in this proximity earlier, a few hours ago. That's going to be the Parker Creek Fire. That's where it started. This is where it is now. The Parker Creek Fire, based on satellite data, is likely well over 10,000 acres now. Officially, it is 1,000. Based on the satellite data and some measurements I did on Google Earth, we're likely looking at least 10,000 acres on the low end. This is now pushing east into Moore County along Highway 354. So Highway 354 is closed between 287 and Channing. Highway 385 is likely closed around Channing. This fire continues to push east, but is not posing a direct threat to any towns at this point. Strong west winds should keep this fire south of Dumas. Blowing dust, big problem across the Texas Panhandle. We have a new fire, relatively new, near Highway near Highway 207, south of Borger. This fire. Let me pull up the tool that allows me to put some distances on the map. This fire is going to be roughly 6 to 8 miles south of Borger. Again, we have west winds gusting up to 70 miles an hour in this area. This fire's likely being pushed east towards Skellytown, but at this point the fire's well west of Skellytown, no issues there. Now, some cirrus clouds are blocking the view over Pampa, but we do know there are several grass fires and several structures burning on the south and southeast side of Pampa, where there are also evacuations underway. I don't know any more than that right now, as you might expect during dynamic situations like this, fires. Your information's not typically going to be the most up-to-date or specific. So in this case, we do know there are evacuations on the southeast side of the city of Pampa, where there are multiple structures burning from a grass fire, whether it was a structure fire that spread in high winds to the grass or a grass fire that spread to the structures. Points moot in that case. It's problematic. Now, let me turn the loop back on. We've actually got a fire down in northwest Texas, west of Iowa Park. We've got upper level cirrus clouds blocking the view at this point, but we do know the fire name. Let me scroll back down here. It was just on my page. Is or two fires. We've got the Belcher fire, which is on 287. 287, just like last Friday, is closed again between Electra and Iowa Park. The Belcher fire on 287. The Burnett Ranch fire is southwest of Iowa Park. There's actually two fires here. The Belcher fire on 287, and then the Belcher fire on 287, and the Burnett Ranch fire southwest of Iowa Park. The Texas Forest Service and fire departments are going to handle this as a complex, or where we have multiple fires in a small area. They tend to handle it as one fire. It helps consolidate resources, etc. So that is going to be the the Belcher Complex. That fire complex is at least 200 acres, no containment. This is going to be southeast of the Electra complex, which we had to deal with last Friday. Now, I'm going to turn on radar data. Sometimes you can see smoke plumes on radar data, so that is what we're going to try to do real quick. I'll switch over to the reflectivity, and no, we're not seeing... Well, actually, that's not true. We do see smoke. Let me turn off satellite. We'll switch over to your traditional satellite view. And... So this is going to be the relative area of the fire, roughly. Okay? This is your smoke plume. So this is the smoke from the Belcher Complex being blown northeast from the fire near 287. Again, 287 is closed between Iowa Park and Electra at this time. We can't see the hotspot signature clearly right now because there are upper level cirrus clouds overhead. Those clouds, even light upper level clouds, can block hotspot views, so that's why we're not seeing any hotspots from that. You can see the smoke plume, and this is the Parker Creek fire, likely well over 1,000 acres, if not 10,000 acres plus. You can see that smoke flying northeast. Let me set this up and we'll load a loop. Just over the last half hour, we'll see how that's looking. And you can see we've got the Parker Creek fire southeast of Channing near Highway 354. And then we've got a new fire south of Borger. And that's going to be on Highway... or near Highway 207. And both these fires are being driven by extremely strong extremely strong west, almost southwest winds up to 70 miles an hour. These numbers you see, those are surface wind gusts. So you can see we're well up in the 50s, 60s. We had a gust up to 90 miles an hour northeast of Dumas at about 1 p.m. near Sunray. We've got a fire west of the city of Guyman in the Oklahoma Panhandle. You can see all that smoke blowing. We'll let the satellite data load here for a second. My apologies. Oh, I see what the issue is there. That'll help. So you can see this smoke blowing east, north, and west of the city of Guyman. Now, you see how all this brown shading color? That is dust. Widespread blowing dust. A legitimate dust storm is underway across the northern Texas Panhandle, West Kansas. Looks like Dodge City, Kansas just recorded a wind gust of 83 miles an hour. Keep in mind, folks, we're not talking about localized straight-line winds of 60, 70, 80 miles an hour. Most of the state of Kansas is going to see winds over 70 miles an hour between now and later this afternoon and evening. this is all moving east. The whole state of Kansas is going to receive widespread destructive winds. When you're talking about winds over 70 miles an hour, those can knock down power lines, result in wildfire ignitions, which might be what has caused some of this. And then, of course, then those fires are, uh, well, racing east is due to the very strong west-southwest winds. Okay, thank you to the Weather Service in Amarillo for putting a tweet out about this. The fire near Guyman, that is the Cobb fire. That's going to be Charlie Oscar Bravo Bravo, COBB. That is the Cobb fire. Let me switch back over to the hotspot mode. So this fire near the city of Guyman, west of Guyman, Oklahoma, in the Panhandle, that is going to be the Cobb fire. The Parker Creek fire is south of Channing, moving east along Highway 354. And then we have a fire south of Borger. I don't know the fire name for that yet. Let me see if that's up on the Texas State Texas State Forestry website. No, it's not yet. But we have a relatively new fire south of the city of Borger on Highway 207. We've got a fire on the southeast side of Pampa that has caused damage to structures. And then we've got multiple fires near Iowa Park. You can see it showing up on the hotspot data, even through upper-level clouds. So we have a very active fire currently in place west of Iowa Park. That is going to be the... let me scroll back to it. I want to make sure I get it right. The Belcher Complex. So 2 fires that are being managed as one. That's the Belcher Complex. It was at least 200 acres 20 minutes ago. So, given the wind, it's likely approaching double that. The Parker Creek fire, currently southeast of Channing, coming into Moore County on Highway 354, has moved several miles since it initially ignited southwest of 355 earlier this afternoon, late this morning, actually. I believe it was near 10:30 or so. This fire has moved, well, here, we'll just put a tool on it. This fire has moved roughly, unofficially, this fire may have already moved over 8 miles. Last check, it was 1,000 acres. Based on the area it's burned so far, based on hotspot data alone, which again is not conclusive, this fire has likely exceeded 10,000 acres by now and continues to burn rapidly under dropping humidity now closer to 15% and west winds gusting up to 70 miles an hour. So explosive growth continues on the Parker Creek fire as it races uncontrollably off to the east along Highway 354 into Moore County. It's about to cross into Moore County up in the Texas Panhandle. Again, this is well west of 287. This has not impacted 287 in terms of a highway closure. However, there's a legit dust storm on 287 from around Dumas all the way up into Stratford, Boise City, Colorado. 287 is closed in Colorado. 287 is closed in Oklahoma. 287 is closed at least from Stratford north. And I really would not recommend going on 287 right now between Amarillo and Stratford, including the city of Dumas. Widespread blowing dust, visibility below 1 mile in some cases. And again, we've got this fast-moving fire near Channing, east of Channing, blowing heavy smoke across 287 near and south of Dumas. We've got this fire now south of Borger by about 6 to 8 miles, moving east. And then we've got a fire that isn't showing up on satellite, but apparently has resulted in some evacuations on the southeast side of Pampa in the Texas Panhandle. And we've got the Belcher Complex west of Iowa Park. Again, we're looking through some upper-level cirrus. That's what these blues are. Those are clouds. So we're actually looking through clouds and still seeing a hot spot on satellite data, which means that fire must be burning extremely intensely. So what I want to do now is we're going to go ahead and switch from the... Well, first I have to press that. We're going to switch from the hotspot data over to a different product. It's going to look a little weird for a second. Nah, I don't like that. Let's just go to true color. So what you're looking at, this is true color. It's essentially your typical satellite image. You can see we have a lot of clouds across the eastern half of Texas. Humidity values are actually pretty high. A lot of moisture in place, but it's still very windy. You can see these wind numbers 30, 40, 50 miles an hour. We had a 54-mile-an-hour wind gust late this morning in Denton. You can see winds still gusting 60, 70 miles an hour in the Texas Panhandle, so it's windy across the entire state of Texas. Now, I want to switch to a different product. This is going to show humidity values. And I want to... Well, actually, you know what? Let me turn off the header real quick so we don't confuse folks. I'm going to switch the numbers you see on your screen here from the current wind gust to humidity values. Humidity values across the Iowa Park fire, the Belcher Complex, aren't all that low. We're talking about 50%, which is decent in terms of humidity, but given the strong winds, the drought conditions, and the fact we're in winter-cured fuels, we're dealing with still dangerous fire weather conditions. I mean, even the same thing over North Texas, humidities are still high, but if we get a grass fire going, it's going to move quickly based on the amount of wind we have, the drought conditions, and of course the fact most fuels have gone dormant for the season. Here are humidity values across the Texas Panhandle. Let me go ahead and turn off the sat data. Well, I'll switch it back over to fire so you can see the numbers. Let me go ahead. Just over the last 2 hours, you can see humidity values are plummeting. These numbers this morning across the eastern panhandle were up in the 80s. Check out how quickly they've dropped. We're talking about humidity values now down into the teens, the 20s. These are very low humidity values as very strong winds continue, so fires are likely exhibiting extreme behavior at this point, extreme growth, rapid rates of spread, probably some long-range spotting as well, especially if we get some cedar trees or other types of heavier vegetation burning that can throw off embers. We're likely seeing some longer distance spotting at this point. Okay. Okay, a message now from the... Now, this is going to be for the fire up in the Oklahoma Panhandle near Guyman. Now, yeah, we're Texas storm chasers, but at this point, you know, we, just like we did last week, we'll cover significant weather in all parts of the country. And in this case, we're dealing with severe fire weather conditions across the Oklahoma Panhandle, too. So, this is now from the Oklahoma Forest Service. An ongoing wildfire west of Guyman will threaten the west edge of the town of Guyman. Residents are urged to be alert for and heed evacuation instructions issued by law enforcement and emergency responders. So again, this is going to be the Cobb Fire. This is a dangerous wildfire that has likely burned several thousand, if not tens of thousands of acres in the last 3 to 4 hours. This fire is being pushed east rapidly because there's 70-mile-an-hour west winds. This fire is moving towards the west side of Guyman, Oklahoma, which may require evacuation soon. Given the ongoing state of the fire, ongoing weather conditions, this fire is not controllable until weather conditions calm down in hopefully about 3 to 4 hours. Winds are going to start coming down. We're going to go from 70 miles an hour back towards 30 miles an hour. That's still not great. That's still critical fire weather, but it's not extreme. So again, it is 1:55 in the afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm David Reimer at the Texas Storm Chasers. We are covering an episode of, or a Southern Great Plains wildfire outbreak episode. The Southern Great Plains wildfire outbreak is actually a set criteria where upper level storm systems like this one historically in the past have resulted in wildfire outbreaks, and that's what we have ongoing right now. I mean, check this out. Just this storm system ramping up across Kansas. It's going to cause here, we'll look up northeast. You can see we've actually got tornado warnings around Grand Island, Nebraska. We're going to have a severe weather outbreak with tornadoes and hurricane force winds of 70 to 100 miles an hour across Iowa and Minnesota tonight. So, I mean, this is very unusual weather for December. Looks like good news for Pampa. There are no evacuations. Apparently, the earlier reports, again, preliminary, were a mistake. So, apparently, there has been a fire on the southeast side of Pampa, but it doesn't sound like it requires evacuations at this time. We've got a fire southeast of Channing that is moving east along Highway 354. That is going to be the Parker Creek Fire, which is likely exceeding 10,000 acres by now, based off, well, I measured some data on Google Earth. It's likely at least 10,000 acres, if not much more than that. This fire is being pushed east in extreme fire weather conditions consisting of southwest west winds up to 70 miles an hour, humidity now 15 to 20%. This fire does not pose any threats to towns, specifically the town of Channing, at least right now, and this fire shouldn't get anywhere near Dumas. We've got a fire south of Borger. Again, this fire should not pose a threat to the city of Borger. It's 6 to 8 miles south of Borger. And you want to know how I can tell we're experiencing rapid rates of spread? This is a satellite loop of about 2 hours. You can see the fire develop. Check out how that hotspot moves from west of 207 to the east of 207. That's the fire burning quickly to the east. So, those of you in Skellytown, west of Skellytown, I don't know if this will make it to Skellytown. Frankly, the winds should die down by 3 to 4 or 5 p.m., so hopefully it's not able to make that hard of a push to the east, but hey, you know what? It would be a good idea to stay aware of that. Now, over here in northwest Texas, we're going to have more issues detecting fires because the upper level clouds are blocking hotspot data, but we do have I want to make sure I get it right. I believe it's the Butcher Complex. It might be the Belcher Complex. Either way, I'm going to make sure I get it right. It's the Belcher Complex. Half an hour ago, it was at least 200 acres, no containment. This fire has resulted in the closure of 287 between Iowa Park on the east and Electra on the west. 287 is likely to remain closed for several more hours. Not least because there's a fire, too, because of smoke causing visibility reductions. So, over the next few hours, here's what we're expecting. As the upper-level storm system, which is unbelievably intense, starts departing to the northeast, we're going to see wind speeds start coming down pretty quickly after 3 to 4 p.m. across the Texas and Oklahoma panhandles. We'll see winds go down from the 70, 80 miles an hour we've seen over the last few hours back towards 20, 30, 40 miles an hour after 4 p.m. At the same time, we're going to see much drier air filter in from the west, so humidity values are likely to plummet to near 10%. After sunset, so 6 p.m. onward, winds are going to drastically fall off, likely down to about 10, 15 miles an hour. A drastic change from the 70 miles an hour right now. That being said, humidity values are going to remain low well into the evening. That, combined with drought-cured and winter-cured fuels, will continue exhibiting dangerous fire weather conditions and dangerous fire behavior through the evening hours. We're also going to see a wind shift from the northwest later this evening a bit. It should not be like 60 mile an hour northwest winds, but that could still cause some fire behavior to sag southeast. At the same time, as the winds diminish, again, we're going to have low humidity into tonight. And also, given the fact we're going to have the low humidity, some of these fires this evening may exhibit they may create their own fire weather behavior. So we could have locally enhanced winds near some of these larger fires, especially the Cobb Fire west of Guyman, which unfortunately is approaching the west side of Guyman, and that's problematic in many ways. And the Parker Creek Fire, which is southeast of Channing, southwest of Dumas, near Highway 354, coming up on the Moore County line. We'll pop up on into Kansas. You can see some hot spots here. Again, we've got a lot of clouds and blowing dust, but wildfire north of Quinter, Kansas. We've got a fire southwest of Oakley, Kansas. We've got a fire northwest of Scott City. We've got a fire near, well, northeast of Leoti and south of Leoti, Kansas. These numbers you see, by the way, are wind gust. Looks like we had an 85-mile-an-hour wind gust in Garden City, a 84-mile-an-hour wind gust in Dodge City, and these damaging winds are moving up into East Kansas. And just for fun, honestly, let's pause. Let me turn off satellite data. Let's take a look at these tornado warnings up in Nebraska. These are severe thunderstorms moving at ridiculous speeds, 70 to 80 miles an hour. Let's just take a look. We're going to switch over to the which way the wind's blowing mode. Yeah, there's some circulation with this storm. South of Grand Island. Grand Island, Nebraska is technically in a tornado warning right now. 10 days before Christmas. Utterly ridiculous, but considering we have a level 4 risk of severe weather out here in Minnesota and Iowa this evening, I mean, it's nuts. I mean, the red's a level 4 out of 5 risk. Orange is level 3. Up until today, Minnesota has only seen a level 2 risk, and that was back in December 2002. So the fact there's a level 4 risk this far north 10 days before Christmas, that's never happened in December. The last severe... Minnesota might see one severe storm every 10, 15 years in December. So this is unprecedented for this time of year. Not to mention the fact most of these areas, especially in Minnesota, still have 6 to 12 inches of snow on the ground. So we're going to see storms moving at 80, 90 miles an hour this evening, a derecho impacting Iowa and southern Minnesota where there's snow on the ground. We could have winds up to 100 miles an hour, and given the very, very intense low-level shear, there's probably going to be tornadoes. And because the storms are going to be moving at 80, 90 miles an hour, even a weak tornado could produce strong tornado damage just because the storms are moving at 80 miles an hour. So, I mean, none of this has happened before in December. So this is, yeah, what can you do? I mean, we here in Texas, we're so familiar with having to deal with severe weather every month of the year. It really doesn't phase as much anymore. I mean, when you have a tornado outbreak the day after Christmas, what, 5, 6 years ago now? Yeah, violent tornadoes in the Metroplex the day after Christmas. I mean, it almost seems... It's not as shocking, but this is just shocking. But, alas, we do not have to deal with severe storms in the state of Texas today. Thank goodness. We might tomorrow evening in northeast Texas, but that's another tale for another video. So, let's go ahead and switch back over to our fire weather coverage. We'll turn the wind gusts back on. We've got a hotspot located northeast of Cherokee in northern Oklahoma. We've got a very dangerous wildfire approaching the west side of Guyman, Oklahoma. That is likely going to require evacuations for Guyman, Oklahoma soon. We've got a dangerous fire southeast of Channing, Texas. The Parker Creek fire, likely exceeding 5,000 to 10,000 acres, if not more. That is not currently threatening Dumas. It's well southwest of Dumas. I don't think there's a chance it gets to Dumas. 354 is closed between Channing and 287. Sounds like power may be out in Channing. This dangerous fire is just southeast of Channing. We've got a fire south of Borger by 6 to 8 miles. And if we look at the spatial tool, this fire is about 8 to 10 miles west of Skellytown. And again, we've got west winds 55 to 65 miles per hour. We've got a fire, the Belcher Complex. This is west of Iowa Park and has resulted in the closure of Highway 287 between Iowa Park and Electra. This is a fire that is southeast of the Electra Complex, from last week. You can see that showing up on hotspot data. We've got clouds overhead, which is why it's kind of fuzzy, but it is definitely still there. So that's what we have going on right now. We've got dangerous fires ongoing across portions of northwest Oklahoma, the Oklahoma Panhandle. We have multiple fires underway in the northern Texas Panhandle. And we may have fires in parts of West Texas, given the fact that there's critical fire weather conditions, but these upper level clouds are blocking the satellite views, so I can't tell you if there are any fires based off satellite data alone. We do note the city of Lubbock just gusted to 61 miles per hour. You can see that wind gust measurement pop up right there. So Lubbock, you just had a 61 mile an hour wind gust recently. Most of northwest Texas, West Texas winds gusting 45 to 55 miles an hour. We've got winds gusting 55 to 75 miles an hour in the Texas Panhandle. You can see this is just the 1 minute satellite data loading. You can see the smoke plume from the dangerous dangerous Parker Creek fire southeast of Channing. Smoke blowing all the way up past Dumas, south of Spearman, south of Perryton. These brown colors you see that are flying northeast, that's blowing dust. That's a dust storm across the northern Panhandle, reducing visibility. Same thing across the Oklahoma Panhandle. And then you look up at West Kansas, and it's just wowsy. I mean, take a look at these wind gusts and numbers. Take a look at this upper-level storm system literally swirling. I mean, wow. Meanwhile, in Oakley, Kansas, 84-mile-an-hour winds. You'll see it gets back up to now 84-mile-an-hour wind gust in Oakley, Kansas right now. Line of severe storms producing 70 to 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts and tornadoes approaching Salina, Kansas, north to Grand Island, Nebraska, resulting in a severe weather outbreak later this evening across Iowa and southern Minnesota. A derecho with 70 to 100-mile-an-hour winds and the threat for tornadoes. This line of storms will be moving northeast at 80 miles an hour, if not faster, and producing that high-impact severe weather across portions of Iowa and southern Minnesota, where there's several inches of snow on the ground. And there will be several more inches of snow on the ground by tomorrow morning, because once this line of storms moves through those areas, temperatures are going to drop, and they're going to get a winter storm. A truly unprecedented upper-level storm system for this part of the country in December. I mean, this is nuts. But that's what happens when you get La Nina and you end up having a warmer than average pattern. I mean, temperatures, high moisture content, etc. And I mean, we're not going to be done with the warm temperatures after this. We're going to have cooler weather this weekend, early next week. By Christmas Day, most of the state of Texas will likely have high temperatures well up into the 70s, 80s too. So it's going to be a very warm Christmas for Texas this year. And at some point, you have to wonder what's going to happen when we end up actually having an upper-level storm system in our part of this country, the southern United States, produce thunderstorms or other sorts of high-impact weather besides wind and wildfires, if we still have these kind of moisture conditions in place. So, good news is rain chances later this week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday across the eastern half of Texas. Unlikely to produce much severe weather. There's a low risk for a few severe storms, but it'll mostly be a rainmaker, which we need across the eastern half of Texas, but I'm afraid folks out west aren't going to see a drop of rain from this storm system. So, again, with fire weather outbreak continues this afternoon across West Kansas. We've got fires approaching the city of Guyman, Oklahoma. Fire southeast of Channing, Texas. That's going to be the the Parker Creek fire. We've got a fire south of Borger on Highway 207. We've got either a structure fire or a grass fire that caused damage on the southeast side of Pampa. And then we've got at least two fires near Iowa Park, southeast of the Belcher Complex from last week. That's resulted in the closure of Highway 287 between Electra and Iowa Park. So, again, for those of you just joining us, I'm David Reimer with the Texas Storm Chasers. We'll wrap this up here in a minute. But again, dangerous critical fire weather conditions continue through the remainder of the afternoon across the Oklahoma and Texas Panhandle. We've had a wind gust up to 90 miles per hour around 1 p.m. in Sunray, Texas. That's just northeast of Dumas and the northern Texas Panhandle. We've had winds 74 miles an hour in Dalhart, 84 miles an hour in Stratford. We've had winds across the Panhandle exceeding 70 miles an hour for a lot of folks. We've heard of structure damage, roofs being ripped off some buildings. Of course, there's probably power outages galore right now from power poles getting knocked down by the very strong winds. Roads are a mess right now. Dust storm across most of the Panhandle north of Interstate 40. And, of course, these winds are wreaking havoc on high-profile vehicles. We know there's been multiple semis knocked over all over the place. So it's not a good afternoon to travel, but winds will decrease significantly and quickly after 4 p.m. By 6 to 7 p.m., winds should be under 30 miles an hour, if not closer to 20 or even 15 for most of the Texas Panhandle. But relative humidity will remain quite low this evening, so fire danger will remain high, and the ongoing fires will likely continue to be problematic through the remainder of the day. For the rest of the state of Texas, we'll zoom on out. You can see we've got winds gusting 20, 30, 40 miles an hour. It's a windy day across the entire state of Texas, no doubt, but definitely not to the extent of what we're seeing across the Panhandle and portions of West Texas. Lubbock just gusted to 61 miles an hour. Okay, at 2:08 p.m., residents in the city of Guyman, west of Sunset Lane and west of County Road 30 in Guyman, you need to evacuate. Go north or go south. So again, evacuation orders being issued for parts of Guyman, Oklahoma as a dangerous wildfire approaches town. 287 is closed between Iowa Park and Electra due to wildfires west of Iowa Park. Gusty winds across the entire state of Texas. Winds will start decreasing after 4 p.m. across the Panhandle in West Texas. Will remain somewhat gusty through the early evening across the remainder of Texas, but winds will start definitely calming down after sunset. So we'll keep an eye on things here, and if need be, we'll be back doing more live coverage covering the Southern Great Plains Wildfire Outbreak episode of December 15th, 2021. You can keep an eye on the current weather conditions and track any smoke plumes that might be detected by weather radar on our website's weather radar, texasstormchasers.com/radar. And we'll be keeping an eye on social media too for y'all's reports, and we'll keep sharing reports of the wildfires, especially on our Twitter account. TX Storm Chasers on Twitter. That's the best and most efficient platform for sharing real-time weather info. So I'm David Reimer. We'll keep an eye on things. Thank you for tuning in. Stay safe, and I hope you took your allergy pills today, because you're going to need it.